Welcome to the Necessity Talk Show. Today we have a very special guest, a great filmmaker who's local in the Lancaster area. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Andrew from Ingoma Films.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I should have you introduce me every time.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So tell us about yourself. What's your story?
Oh boy, how long do we have? Thank you for having me. I appreciate that.
Of course.
My story. I'm originally from Rwanda, born and raised. Came to the U.S. for the first time in 2008, I think. And when I came, it was to go to school, but I had the added sort of desire to be a filmmaker, so I kind of stuck around and never really left. So yeah.
What got you into filmmaking?
Initially, obsession, just pure obsession. I I skipped school to go watch movies. I watched everything. I mean, I've seen like a lot of movies in my life. I watched everything: Indian movies, Chinese movies, American movies. I didn't speak English very much when I was growing up, but I would watch like poorly translated or like dubbed over films in my native language, for Rwanda. But I was just obsessed. And then when I was younger, somebody gave me a camera. I think I was 11 or something like that. And that's when it started to feel like something I could actually do. And then just a trial and error. But when I was growing up in Rwanda, the path to becoming an actual filmmaker where you like make it a living wasn't clear. So I doubt, I was like, maybe I should act. That ended real quick. And then slowly, as I grew up, it became more and more clear that that's what I wanted to do. Yeah.
Yeah. So you didn't go to film school, right?
No.
So what were some of the challenges that you faced trying to learn the skill of filmmaking without getting that like educational or I guess like more traditional education towards filmmaking?
Yeah. See, that's interesting. I'm not really sure that even the people that go to film school would say that that's the way to get knowledge about filmmaking. I think it's like you have to learn by doing. Whether it's through film school, so you get opportunities to work on student films and whatnot, like that's good. But really, you just have to be on set a bunch and like try things and keep working and just keep progressing, right? The thing I didn't have was a community of like-minded individuals that were pursuing like the same goal. So it was a little bit more challenging to find collaborators, And I didn't know how much you needed that. But really, if you're gonna make a film that is worth anything, you need people around you who are pursuing the same sort of goal.
And how long did it take you to develop that network of people who were like-minded?
Yeah, a long time. I think that is. And if you're starting out in the industry, and it's not like I've made it, but I'm just saying, like, if you're starting out in the industry, the best thing you can do for yourself is find a team, find a group of people who are like-minded and like really go at it together. Like that's the thing that honestly has made a difference in my career. It's collaborative.
Yeah. And backtracking just a little bit, what were some of your like biggest inspirations coming up, and the things that made you drive to become a filmmaker?
Dude. So that's why I'm so freaking excited that you're doing this, right? The reason why I chose acting initially was because like I looked around at like filmmakers who were black and it was like Denzel Washington. Like, I guess, screw it. Like but I was not inclined as an actor. I'm a terrible actor. I think inspiration was just people of color doing it. And there wasn't a lot. And so as I've grown up, I'd actually say I'm a filmmaker, but I would say I'm an educator. Is an even more interesting way to think about what I do, right? So I like teaching younger people, helping them like find their path, and then being like a model in the industry about like what to try and get after. Yeah.
So what led you down the path of developing Ingoma Films?
Yeah, so Ingoma Films is the product of listening to my wife, which if you have a wife, you should listen to them. I had the opportunity to work with a production company, and as I was asking whether that was the right next step, we just started to look at like what do I want to do, what kind of career do I want to have, and Ingoma Films came out of that search and that question, right? In conversation with my wife, it was like we want to make an impact on these types of stories. Ingoma is a weird word, right? It means drums or the songs played on it. It also has a double meaning as the seat of the pre-colonial kingdom of Rwanda. So like we talk about our brand as being one grounded in sort of traditional storytelling that stretches back millennia. Like people were telling stories, beautiful stories, in Africa long before
Yeah.
and so we wanted to kind of build a brand around that kind of idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how does the process of figuring out which stories to tell come about?
Process is never the same.
Mhm.
No one project is exactly the same as the past one, but we pursue our heart. So there's two parts of what we do. There's the part that pays the bills, keeps the lights on, commercials, brand identity films. These are the stuff that you're outbidding, you're getting RFPs, requests for proposals, you're doing what everybody else is doing. But we try to align ourselves with companies that are doing good in the world, or companies whose work we really believe in. Not all perfect, but we've been lucky to have clients that we like working with. And then as far as the original work that we do, so like the passion projects or the long form stuff that we have, some of the stuff is just developed from the ground up. These are stories that we care about, and we will find them and sort of develop them.
Yeah.
Write them, do whatever. Some other, it's just all different. Yeah.
Yeah. So in the beginning of processes of building Ingoma, was it a lot of just reaching out, just sending as much as possible, or was it easy to get people to come to you? How was that?
Yeah. I should say we haven't figured everything out. Like it's a journey, it takes a long time to figure out how to do a business. And I think something like 7 years before, a lot of businesses die before however many years they're around. But before we formed the company, we had been working in the industry for some time. So we had our name was already known. And because of the way that we work, we can do any number of things at the same time. Some of them are collaborating with other production companies to production manage their projects. Others are original work. Others are, white labeling under. We work in so many different ways that the mistakes that we made in the beginning were actually taking on too much, not having work. So I thought when we started a business, I thought that the issue was going to be finding work. It turned out for us that the issue was saying the right kinds of no. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as you went along, and I know you're still, kind of figuring it out.
Yeah.
But when did you start to feel like you started to get a good footing where you were like, okay, I can't, the machine's kind of rolling here, the gears are kind of moving?
It's a evolving process. You figure something out, a new thing comes up, you figure that out. The biggest challenge for our particular company is balancing it with a healthy family life. I work with my wife. We have an 18-month-old son. And just last year alone, we are involved in 2 feature documentaries, a feature film, multiple commercials, brand identity films, short films. It was a lot.
Yeah.
It was a it was nuts, right?
Yeah.
So trying to balance that out with a healthy home life. Oh, I should say, it may not be a lot, but we are full time. It's a very small company. The people that are working on the projects full time. Yeah.
So what is that like? How do you maintain that relationship? Of working with your wife, making sure that you have time to talk about work and have time to talk about just whatever.
Yeah.
Is that tough?
Yeah, dude. I'll be real with you. That was a real challenge, especially last year. Yeah, it was a really challenging because I think young businesses, certainly the way we were working, we had a bit of a starvation mode, and then you couple that, so not starvation mode, fear of starvation. So we think it's gonna be feast or famine, so we gotta say yes to everything, and then we're doing everything. But then also you couple that with a lot of opportunity for growth, accelerated growth. So opportunities to sort of be involved in all these projects that were, and then what we lost was sight of I shouldn't even say we. I wasn't paying enough attention to what was important. And so I found myself a lot of times just being like, yeah, you'd be better off spending time with your son right now, not being on set. So that was hard. Everybody isn't going to have that as a struggle, but for me, I'm so prone to like just like immerse myself fully in film that it was a challenge for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your favorite part of the filmmaking process?
Dude, this right here, 100%. Chatting, talking to people. I'm an extrovert through and through. It's just like definitional extrovert. I just love meeting people, man. I'll do this at the end of a 16-hour day, no problem. Like I just love talking to people. Interviewing people is probably interviews. So me on the other side of this is probably my single favorite thing in the whole filmmaking business.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's dope. What would you say is like, what advice would you give to somebody who's like starting out and doesn't really know where to go, wants to get started in filmmaking, but like, it's like big, vast open ocean, they don't know where to set sail.
Yeah. Nuance is everything. So like I would have to know how old they are, why they're in the film industry, what a good life for them looks like. Everybody has a different thing that makes them feel alive, right?
Yeah.
I think maybe that's a good place to start. Like you should do whatever makes you feel most alive, and try and do that in a way that actually keeps the lights on, keeps you fed, and do. Now, in terms of like practical wisdom about like how to go about in the film industry, one, find a mentor, somebody who you trust and believe in. Don't be shy about asking for help, and ask them to guide you. Meet with them once a month, once a week, once whatever. Call them, pester them, email them, do whatever. But like lock them a mentor down and get help, because there's just too many questions to be answered. So one, find a mentor in the film industry, who's somebody whose career you want to emulate in some way. Second thing is, depending on how old you are or where you are in your career, try and specialize a little bit. And so like everybody can do the generalist thing, but if you want to be in the film industry, not just like a videographer who does weddings and does whatever, like we're talking about the film industry, not the which has merit. You can be a videographer, and film everything, make $3,000 a wedding, and you could do that, and you could have a great career. Yeah. If you want to be a filmmaker, specializing is the way you go from being a PA to. Does that make sense? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Did you ever find yourself getting like overwhelmed with like, the gear, making sure you knew the knowledge, the lingo, and such?
I feel like every young filmmaker is obsessed with gear, and it doesn't matter. It does a little bit, right? Like an Alexa Mini is better than a T2i, but it's not about the gear. There are thousands of kids who graduate high school probably every day not every day, but like thousands of kids who graduate who are in their teens who can edit faster than I can. They have shortcuts on Dial. They do, After Effects, little cool things, but that's not the same thing as telling stories. At the end of the day, film is an emotive medium, meaning you are trying to communicate some sort of emotion, trying to tell some sort of story, and those things it's not cool. Like, it's not just about being cool. Like, we're doing like little cool things. So everybody gets obsessed. At one point, my obsession was figuring out, long exposure shots. And, now I'm in Philadelphia at midnight getting, light trails. And everybody goes through that. You have to go through that. You have to have an understanding of the gear. And then you figure out how to do, some sort of thing, speed ramp. And now everything you edit has a speed ramp in it. It's just things like that. But hopefully you evolve out of that, and you focus on the things that actually matter.
How do you balance between, your artistry and like paying the bills, and like, doing a project that like, might seem a little bit more mundane, but you still want to put your artistic spin on it?
That's a great question. I think I was talking to my friend earlier. I think the happiest people are the people that are living most aligned with whatever they are designed to do. You may not make a lot of money, right? And money is not the determining factor. If you should eat, eating is good. You should have a roof over your head. You should have shelter and things. But money is not the definition of success. There are these great photographers, for example, where they became great photographers after they passed away. Somebody found a box of photography that they did, and it was compelling and incredible, and they got recognition after they died. There are plays that have been on Broadway that weren't discovered until somebody passed away, or like that kind of thing, right? Or maybe like I think maybe Rent or something like that. The guy who anyway, I digress. The point is, for the people that are living in alignment with what you're called to do, which I think everybody's called to do something, that is success. So for me, I try really hard to make every project that I work on, every project, regardless of how small, how whatever, a meaningful artistic endeavor. That's not always the case, and that's just you have to be fine with that. But I try very hard to make every project a meaningful artistic endeavor. That means I consider myself a crafts person, maybe not even an artist through and through. I'm a craft person, So there are technical things that you have to try and lock down. There are an interview, which is I talked about being my favorite thing. I try to really lock in and really get to know somebody and listen and yeah, that's artistic. Well, it's a craft. Yeah.
Yeah. What were some of the first pitfalls that you found yourself in, and how were you able to maneuver and get out of those?
Yeah, pursuing clout. Don't pursue clout. Get better. Truly, like being a filmmaker. That's a pitfall. Like your work is not good because somebody praised you. That's not it. Because if depending on who you're talking to, like if you take your work to like a middle schooler, like you're the best filmmaker that ever lived, and now let's compare it to Christopher Nolan. That's not it. Getting better is better. So the pitfalls were clout, driving like what to being concerned about what people think about my work, overly concerned. Not having a balance. So like I think in order for an artist or a filmmaker or a craftsman to have something to share, you have to fill yourself.
Yeah.
Read, go to the museum, watch good movies. That in turn makes you a better artist. And too many of us, myself, spend too much time just like doing things, and that's me. Like I do too many things as opposed to like actually fill my tank up, if you will. Yeah.
And how are you making sure that you're evolving as a creative and making sure that you're growing as a filmmaker?
Yeah. So right now, I'm trying to spend more time with my son and my wife, and because that actually makes me a better filmmaker. Empathy, tapping into emotion, and noticing beauty, things like that. That's there's this film called American Beauty. Was it? I think it's American Beauty. There's a shot of it. There's a shot in there of a plastic bag falling down, right? It's one of the greatest movies ever made. And there's a long shot of a plastic bag just kind of, but like somebody has to be like patient enough to like, sort of be aware of that. Yeah. Not to get too esoteric, like too like sort of fugazi out there about this stuff, but like, seriously, think about it. So think of a time you've really locked into like a piece of music, takes you to a place, right? Think of a time where, have you ever heard a piece of music or seen something like your hair stands up a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely.
Lean into that. You know what I mean? Like that's presence. Yeah.
And when do you best find yourself like in those situations, like on set? Like when do you know like you have something where you're like this is that thing? Like I know this is going to be good for not only just the audience and the people watching, but for me.
See, now we're getting deep. I have a buddy, a frequent collaborator called Sebastian Nieves. He's a great cinematographer. I do a lot of projects with him. We do a lot of projects with him. And we've gotten to a point where I feel like the only communication we have on set is that feels wrong, or it doesn't feel right, or it feels right. And it really is that. Like, on a certain level, it really is as basic as asking yourself, like, do I like this? Does it feel right? Now, look, there's all kinds of stuff that you have to understand, technically speaking, and then you have to figure out, like, how do you actually make it feel right, right? But a lot of times, it really does come down to trusting your gut and asking, does it feel right? And a lot of the worst mistakes that I make on set are when I know it feels wrong and I still do it anyways, or I'm not brave enough, or you let the noise muddy your. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And speaking of like that noise, how do you make sure that you're blocking out the noise and making sure that you're staying true to your vision?
I'm not perfect at that. I tell you that. I mean, I'm learning to be better at it. How do you block out the noise? For me, it's not for everybody. I'm trying to stay off of social media. I know it's an ungodly necessity for growing businesses and whatnot. But we have a guy on our team who's helping with that. Now helping with that. So I'm trying to stay off of that because I don't need to know how many people liked my photo. I don't need to know that. Yeah, it doesn't do very much for me. Actually, it does very much for me, but it shouldn't do very much for me. Like I may like it, but it's actually not good for me. I'm trying to carve out time to read more, to think more, just like listen to music more. Just be more. I play basketball on Thursday mornings. Honestly, that's like good for you. That's good for your creative mind. Yeah. And do you ever find yourself? Because I know we kind of touched on this. Like you find yourself in moments where you're like, I need to slow down. And how do you slow down? If it wasn't those moments that you just mentioned. Dude, every single day is a moment I need to slow down. No, I mean, honestly, I mean this sincerely. The single worst thing about my filmmaking is my schedule. And there's nobody to blame except me. It's like the worst thing about my filmmaking career is how much I pack my schedule. Yeah. And finally, last question. If you could give some advice to yourself 10 years ago about your journey and where you've ended up now, what would you say to yourself? 10 years ago. Finish projects. Finish them. Look, man. There's a lot of wannabe filmmakers. And the safest project is an unfinished project. That's the safest project because you can work on something for 40 years as long as it's not finished. Like you don't have to deal with it. Just finish it, man. Finish it, move on to something new. Finish it, move on. Because the only way to get better at filmmaking is filmmaking. You actually have to do it, So if you keep working on stuff but never just finish the project, it won't be great. That's the thing. Like, that's a funny thing. I guess I would I would just comfort myself in the knowledge that, like, your first. Heck, the ones I'm doing now, hopefully, are shit. Hopefully I look back 10 years from now, I'm like, man, that was garbage, and I've grown that much more. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just like learn to be comfortable with the bullshit and just keep it moving. Yeah, man. Well, I appreciate you coming here, man. Of course, my man. Go ahead, let the people know where they can find you. On social media. On social media? Yeah. I don't know. At Ingoma Films, I think. At Ingoma Films. Yeah, ingomafilms.com.
Yeah.
And then you can, yeah. I really am like an old person. I don't do well with social media. So.
It's all good. I appreciate you
Hey
being on
man,
the show,
thank you,
man.
man.
Appreciate it.
I appreciate what you're doing. I really do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Perfect.
All right.
Perfect.
Yeah.